Hello and welcome to the Archie Luxury channel. Today I want to give advice about staying away from dogs and other pieces of shit. That's right, I want to count down the top 25 watches of all time. Now, the reason I've decided to put this clip together is because I've had so many viewers come to me and say, what do I think of this brand? What do I think of that brand? And so many people want reassurance that the watches that they've chosen aren't pieces of shit, to make sure that they look refined when they go into a setting. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of people have bought absolute bullshit. They have bought crap watches, and I'm not afraid to tell them. I mean, let's be honest here, okay? I'm putting these videos together, and, I've got no one's ass to kiss. I just tell the truth as I see it. So let's start this compilation by looking at the top 25 watches of all time. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top and work my way down, because I think it's good to, I've already put a video together on the 10 greatest watches, and I did that in reverse order, but this time I thought, fuck it, I'm going to do the different approach. I'm going to start at the top watches and work my way down. Now, the thing is with my choices, they're not in order of the greatest. Well, I would say they're in the order of what I would consider the most famous, the most popular, and also the best. But, like for example, in number 1 spot, I've got a Calatrava Patek. And in number 10 spot, I've got a Lange. Now, many people would say, well, the Patek and the Lange really should be on the same sort of level. And that's a fair point. But what I'm looking at is bang per buck. So these are pieces which I'm trying to give generalist advice, and they're not in order of the most expensive to the least expensive. They're in order of what I think is a good buy, and just to give you some variety. So let's start it off now, because so many people want advice, and I think it's time we bite the bullet and go through the best watches. Okay, number 1. There can only be one number 1 spot, and the absolute king of the watch industry, the absolute best watch in the world title, the watch you could meet Jesus with, you could meet Nelson Mandela with, you could meet a president with, a prime minister, a military dictator. It is a Patek Philippe Calatrava. Now, in my own collection here, my holy grail, my number 1 piece is my Patek Philippe Calatrava 5107 in white gold. And the thing is, I must say that for number 1 spot, I'm going to give this brand a special listing. That's right, the Patek gets a special listing. Any Patek can be a number 1 piece. It doesn't matter if you've got a 70s Nautilus, if you've got an Aquanaut. Patek Philippe is such a strong brand, any of their pieces are a number 1 billing. The name Patek Philippe is the best brand in the world for watches, and I don't care what anyone says. The number 1 spot deserves a special prize, and for Patek, it's the fact that all Pateks are number 1. In my own collection, I've actually chosen the signature model. When I say signature model, I say this is the model that the brand is most famous for. And I believe the Calatrava line represents all the values of the Patek Philippe name. In my particular case, I've got a beautiful Patek 5107 Grand Tawley Calatrava, and that's the big size piece, which is a little bit not in line with traditional Patek pieces, but I think it's a stunning piece. It's classic. It represents all the virtues of the brand, and I'm very proud to have it. So there we have it. Number 1 billing, any Patek Philippe at all. And that's a very, very top place to be. So there you have it. Any Patek watch at all gets number 1 billing. And I'm also going to add there, that includes any quartz Patek watch as well. If you've got a Calatrava quartz, like a 3944, it's a gents Calatrava, no problem at all. It deserves number one billing spot equally as a mechanical wine Patek Philippe. And there's no other brand that I will do this for. It's purely because Patek is the greatest brand in watches of all time. Okay, moving right along. Number two spot. Okay, there can only be one number one winner, and the number two spot is the Rolex Datejust. And this here is a particular favourite of mine. The Datejust, I think, is one of the greatest Rolexes of all time. The Datejust has been a bit overshadowed in recent years because the Rolex sports range is so popular. But if Rolex didn't have the sports range, the Datejust would be a hugely more popular line. And I've got to say, the Datejust, I think, represents excellent buying on the second-hand market. I'd particularly like to mention the two favourites in the Datejust range for me are the 16233 and the 16234. And basically, 16233 is the two-tone version, and the 16234 is the steel with the white gold bezel. And I think both of those pieces there are gorgeous. The Datejust is a great watch. How many dress watches do you know that are waterproof and able to be worn in most environments and situations? And I mean, you've got to hand it to Rolex. They have really put together a fantastic watch. And I must also give special mention to the ladies Datejust, because the Rolex ladies Datejust, whether it's in steel, whether it's in two-tone, or whether it's in yellow gold as the President version, the Datejust ladies is a very special edition, and I think they are probably the most versatile ladies piece on the market. Sure, a Patek 24 is more classy than a ladies Datejust, but what else is so versatile and waterproof? And there's nothing that comes close to the Rolex Datejust. So we've got to give the second spot to the Rolex Datejust. The Datejust is also equally as beautiful on a Jubilee bracelet as it is on an oyster bracelet, and it's a versatile piece, and the Rolex Datejust is one of the greatest watches of all time. So number two is the Rolex Datejust. Number three, the number three spot in the list is the Rolex Submariner. There we have it. Number three is Rolex Submariner. Rolex has already won the number two spot for the Datejust, and there we go. The next spot down the tree goes to the Submariner. Now, some people would argue the Submariner is more popular than the Datejust, but you'd certainly have to give the Submariner as being the ultimate sports watch of all time. And it's had a very, very long history, the Submariner, and from its starring role in the James Bond movie Dr. No, the Submariner has taken on a huge popularity and it's been an aspirational watch for many people, and this has sort of culminated in the final release now of the ceramic Submariner with the even with the green dial and bezel, and you certainly cannot take away from the Submariner. I'm personally not much of a fan of the ceramic version. I think it's I prefer the pre-ceramic, but look, Submariners are great buys. I'm a big fan of the no-date Submariner. I think the 1406A no-date Submariner is great buying, and it's a bit more unusual. And I think it's the third spot is not an easy spot to get on my tree, that's for sure, and the Submariner does it. The only unfortunate thing with the Submariner is that there are starting to be a situation where there's too many around. Too many assholes are wearing the Submariner, and that's something which it's a bit like you can throw a criticism at BMW. They're too successful, because you want to keep these things an exclusive thing away from the hoi polloi. So that's the only criticism we could throw at Rolex with the Submariner. Okay, moving along there. Fourth spot. The fourth spot. Okay, what could it be? What could be the fourth watch on the list there? And this is a brand which I have sung the virtues about for a long time. And it's the Omega Speedmaster Man on the Moon watch. This is the mechanical Speedmaster. It's the one famously made famous for going to the moon and approved by NASA for moon flights. And the Omega Speedmaster is one of the greatest iconic sports watches of all time. I think the Rolex Submariner just pipped the Speedmaster by a touch, but the Omega Speedmaster is one of the greatest watches of all time. What else is so iconic that it's been to the moon? What an achievement! And you've got to be thankful that the Speedmaster is actually one of the more affordable luxury watches, and it's great buying, and it's got a great history. And I mean, you look at the price of the Rolex Daytona. That's a very expensive piece. But the Omega Speedmaster, wow, it's got history, it's got everything going for it, and I think it's one of the greatest watches of all time. The Omega Speedmaster, you can't go wrong. Stay away from the automatic Omega Speedmaster. It is not the same animal as the mechanical one. Please be careful. The automatic one is smaller than the manual wind piece, and it's not the same watch at all. It may look the same, it may smell the same, but it's not the same. Stay away from the automatic Speedmaster. It's an okay watch, but it's not in the same league. It's definitely not in the same league as the Omega Speedmaster Man on the Moon piece. And what a great level to have achieved there. Okay, moving right along. Spot goes to one of my all-time favourite watches, sports watches. It goes to the Breitling Navitimer. Does it get any better than a Breitling Navitimer? It's a chronograph. It's got a timing mechanism. You can use it's got a slide rule built into the bezel. What a fantastic piece. It's got one of the most beautiful dials of all time. And the Breitling itself there is such a fantastic brand. The highly polished case, the blinginess of it, and you've got to realize with Breitling, they've been oversized and big for a long time, way before the genre became popular. And again, the Breitling Navitimer on the used market represents really good buying. It's a fantastic piece, and some criticism has been thrown at Breitling because they don't use an in-house movement. They use a Valjoux 7750 movement in the modern Navitimers. But look, that's a good workhorse. It's a nice movement. They do a lot of finishing to it, and it's just such a lovely piece. The Breitling is a great brand, and the Navitimer is probably the most iconic Breitling of all time there. Okay, moving right along. Spot number 6. There can only be one Cartier Tank, and that's the Louis Cartier Tank in 18 karat gold. Now, this watch has been made famous by such likes of Jackie Onassis Kennedy. Also, her husband, she gave her husband a Tank watch. The Tank is one of the greatest pieces of watch history. Yves Saint Laurent was a big fan of the Tank watch. Andy Warhol loved his Cartier Tank watch. And for the collector, you've really got to the classic Louis Cartier Tank in 18 karat. Don't confuse it with the musty Cartier. That's the more middle class version of it. It's a gold plated tank. You really want the proper 18 karat gold Louis Cartier Tank. And they're quite good buying. They're a little bit small by modern standards. The size of them is now considered more of a lady's watch. But look, they're a beautiful piece. The design is classic. The Cartier Tank has spawned so many other things. They've spawned the Tank Francais. It's spawned the Americana. So many different variations of the Tank have come out. But the classic Louis Cartier Tank in 18 karat gold is a lovely piece, and it's iconic, and it stands the test of time. And you're not going to look like a turkey if you turn up with a 18-carat Cartier Tank on your wrist, that's for sure. Okay, moving right along now. And what's in number 7 spot? I put 2 watches together. They're from the same house. It's the house of Cartier again, and it's the Cartier Santos and the Cartier Panther. Now, this line here has been a fantastic saviour to the Cartier house, and the Santos and the Panther both came out in the late 70s to compete against the two-tone and steel Rolex Datejust, and they did it with French class and dignity. And the Santos itself, well, that's just a piece which just defied all trends at the time. It highlighted the screws, and it was just beautiful. The Panther model, wow, what can I say? It was only available in quartz, which is a sign of its time, but it had that beautiful bracelet which reflected the fur coat of a beautiful feline cat, and that's where it gets its name, the Panther, from. So the Santos and the Panther, 2 iconic pieces which were probably the most faked watches in the world for a period of time there. And the Santos has gone to live another day. It's been reinvigorated as the Santos 100, where it's certainly beefed up and very, very, very modern. But look, the traditional Santos in two-tone steel or 18-karat gold is absolutely beautiful. They're a great piece, and I don't think you can go wrong wearing a Panther or a Santos anywhere. And that's the beautiful thing about these watches. When you buy iconic pieces, you're buying a piece which stands the test of time. You don't need to make apologies for it. It's a classic piece, and you can wear it anywhere, anytime you damn well feel like. And the Santos and the Panther, it doesn't get any more French, doesn't get any more chic than that. And I think those pieces there have stood the test of time well. I think we'll have a revival in the Panther and the Santos, the traditional size pieces. So there you go. The Cartier Santos and the Panther in spot number 7. Okay, moving right along. Okay, spot 8 goes to the JaegerLeCoultre Reverso. The year is 1931, and JaegerLeCoultre reversed this watch that flips, and doesn't get any more iconic than a Reverso. One of my all-time favorite pieces is my JaegerLeCoultre Grand Date Reverso, and it's just such a magnificent piece. The Reverso, look, if you are buying a Reverso, I've got 2 bits of advice for you. Number 1, try and get it in steel. Resist the temptation to get the gold one. I love gold, but the Reverso is just so nice in steel. And number 2, get the mechanical one. Stay away from the automatic or quartz one. And that's the thing with the Reverso. It's a watch I feel should be in steel, and it should be mechanical wind. Other than that, you can pick any one you want. And the Reverso itself is just so classic. It's such a great brand. And I think JaegerLeCoultre has some really good bang per buck in watches. If you're going to buy a luxury piece, JaegerLeCoultre is super luxury. Okay, it's not a Holy Trinity member. The Holy Trinity is Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, and Vacher and Constantine. But let me say this to you. JaegerLeCoultre made the basic e-Bosches for those houses. That's correct. JaegerLeCoultre has had a huge involvement with AP, VC, and Patek Philippe. So don't ever be shy with a JaegerLeCoultre. And the Reverso, it's the 80th anniversary this year of the Reverso, and does it get any more classic? The flipping watch, it's just beautiful. Personally, for me, I think the piece belongs on a leather strap. That's my own view. They look great on a steel bracelet, but my own opinion, the leather strap is what the Reverso is always meant to wear. So have fun picking a Reverso. I mean, whether it's a ladies Reverso for the wife or mistress, or whether it's a Reverso for yourself. I mean, it doesn't get any better than a JaegerLeCoultre Reverso. So my advice, try and get steel, manual wind, and on a leather strap. Okay, moving on to the next slot. Okay, spot 9, Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. That's right, the Royal Oak came out in 1972, designed by JaegerLeCoultre. It was a classic piece from day one, and I must say, as I'm taping this bit for the video, I'm wearing my Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, and I just love it. It's just so classy, and the Royal Oak itself, it's quite an interesting brand itself. There, Audemars Piguet itself is a Holy Trinity member, and a lot of people forget this when you see the Royal Oak offshore chronograph, but the Audemars Piguet had a lot to do with ultra thin movements, and the Royal Oak was released with some very thin movements indeed. And this is the beautiful thing with Audemars. Audemars had that beautiful 2003 movement. That's the ultra thin 1.64 millimeter high movement, manual wind, and they also had some really super thin automatic movements, and they carried on that technology with the release of the Royal Oak in 1972, and the Royal Oak, I think you just have to give it. It's one of the most iconic pieces. I have got a Royal Oak in two-tone, and I love it. I think it represents the time period that it was released in, and I just love the Royal Oak standard size. The Royal Oak has also spawned the Royal Oak offshore chronograph, which is a huge size. So it just shows you how Audemars Piguet has moved the focus with the demand from the customers, and that's probably why the brand has been so successful, because from the ultra thin in the 70s to the supersized pieces of today, Audemars has followed that curve very carefully, and I do love the offshore chronograph, but I honestly prefer the standard size Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. I think it's just classic and elegant, and the thing with the Royal Oak itself is just such a well-made piece. Anything Audemars Piguet is expensive and well-made, and it doesn't get any better than a Royal Oak. And I must say, I really do want to add another AP to my collection. I've just gotten a yearning to have a Royal Oak automatic version in steel. So there you have it. The Audemars Royal Oak takes the number 9 position. Okay, the number 10 slot. What's the number 10 spot winner? And that spot goes to the Lange 1. The Lange 1 is one of the most beautiful watches to come out of the German house. And Lange itself there, they had a huge history of making beautiful watches. They made watches for the Luftwaffe, that's the German Air Force. The Nazis, they had a history of Hitler gave Lange's out as presents, and look, Lange itself there have got some wonderful pieces, very much German tradition instead of the Swiss, and I'd love to have a Lange 1. I think they're a great piece there. I've got my reservations. I still find it very painful to own a German piece after the Germans were so bad to so many people. My own grandfather was a prisoner of war with the Nazis, and that bites hard. I don't mind using consumer goods like a BMW or a Mercedes, but a precious heirloom piece like a wristwatch, and I've got reservations about buying a Lange. But Lange itself there, they really do the big size pieces so well, and the Lange 1 is one of the all-time classics. It's just so well executed, it's so well made. You'd have to respect the brand, and I don't think you could find a nicer non-Swiss piece. Lange probably is the best non-Swiss piece in the world, and That's not an easy spot to win. But Lange itself, classic piece, and I think you'll see a lot of things happening. I'd much rather have a Lange than a Frank Muller, that's for sure. Okay, that's the top 10 pieces in the collection, and I'm also going to be reviewing 15 more pieces, and this is to help people to avoid dogs and other pieces of shit. So please stay tuned. Thank you very much, and enjoy my videos. Thank you.